Well, good morning and welcome to the Manufacturing Summit. My name is Ian McLean, President and CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we live and work on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples, as we seek a renewed relationship based on a foundation of mutual understanding and respect. As participants in today's event, we are coming together as one. We believe everyone is free to be their true self and receive the same respect and opportunity. We hope you'll join us in fostering a positive environment here today to ensure a safe and welcoming space for all. For those joining us for the first time, welcome to the Manufacturing Summit. For nearly 15 years, this event has brought together industry leaders, innovators, and decision makers to explore the trends, challenges, and opportunities shaping the future of manufacturing. This year, we're especially pleased to co-host the summit alongside Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium, widely known as EMC. EMC is Canada's largest manufacturing consortium and one of the country's most active manufacturing networks. Their focus on collaboration, operational excellence, innovation, and continuous improvement aligns closely with the work we do here at the Chamber. As manufacturers continue to navigate several pressures and uncertainty, partnerships like this one are more important than ever. While today's event is rooted in Waterloo Region, we are proud to welcome manufacturers, partners, and business leaders from right across Ontario. That broader exchange of ideas and experiences is exactly what strengthens this sector and helps move it forward. Manufacturing remains the largest industry sector in Waterloo Region, spanning automotive, aerospace, robotics, food processing, plastics, fabricated metals, and advanced technologies. Our region continues to rank among Canada's leading manufacturing hubs. What makes this region particularly unique is the intersection of manufacturing expertise and world-class innovation. Manufacturers here are increasingly integrating automation, robotics, AI, and advanced technology into their operations, supported by a strong ecosystem of post-secondary institutions, research organizations, and technology partners. Waterloo Region has built a global reputation not only for making things, but for reimagining how things are made. Today's summit is an opportunity to continue building on those strengths and to encourage greater collaboration across our manufacturing ecosystem. Throughout the morning, we'll hear from industry experts and business leaders on topics including workforce development, AI, and advanced manufacturing supply chain resilience, and the evolving economic landscape impacting our sector. Most importantly, today is about sharing ideas, learning from one another, and continuing the conversations that will help shape the future of manufacturing in Ontario and across Canada. Before we get to those conversations, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the sponsors and partners who help make this event possible. So thanks to their support, we're able to offer complimentary admission for manufacturers, helping bring together voices from across the sector for today's discussions. I'd ask you to just hold your applause until we recognize all the sponsors. So a thank you to our co-host and presenting partner, Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium. We'll hear from EMC, the EMC team throughout the morning, but special thanks to Jason, Aaron, and Tiffany for co-hosting today's event with us. Our gold sponsors, BDC, Conestoga College Institute of Technology and Advanced Learning, Cowan Insurance Group, Home Hardware Stores Limited, Toyota Motor Manufacturing Canada, and Waterloo Economic Development Corporation. Our bronze sponsors today, the City of Kitchener, the City of Waterloo, GHD, the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region, National Bank, and the Region of Waterloo. And our event partners here at Bingemans, HF Events, KW Oktoberfest, and Sherwood. We'd also like to acknowledge our advocacy partners from Google, Manulife, and the Schlegel Urban Developments. Their ongoing support plays an important role in helping us continue our advocacy efforts on behalf of the local business community here in Waterloo Region. So please join me in thanking all these incredible sponsors. For those joining us in person today, we hope you've had a chance to connect with some of the exhibitors in the expo. If you haven't made it around to everyone yet, don't worry, you'll have an opportunity during our coffee break. With nearly 30 exhibitors participating today, we have a strong mix of manufacturers, industry partners, and business support organizations represented throughout the expo. If you don't have time to visit everyone, or if you're joining us virtually, you can scan the QR code to access today's digital event program. The program includes the agenda, speaker bios, and additional information about our exhibitors, along with links to learn more about their organizations and services. We're pleased to welcome representatives from across government, community leadership, and industry who are here to support and participate in today's event, and I'd like to recognize some of them now. I'm not sure he's here, but City of Kitchener Mayor Barry Verbanovich is here or on his way. I don't see him waving. City of Waterloo Mayor Dorothy McCabe is on her way as well. MPP Jess Dixon, thank you for joining us today, Jess. And Chamber board members Gina Hudel, Kathy Snyder, and Stephanie Soulis are joining us today. Thank you all so much for joining us. I want to take just a moment, especially since many of you may be new to the Chamber, to share an important initiative we're currently leading. As part of our 140th anniversary, we're launching a fundraising campaign in support of the physician recruitment work we do here in Waterloo Region on behalf of the community. Our goal is to raise an additional $140,000 in recognition of the Chamber's 140 years of serving the community, so we can do more to recruit the family physicians needed here in Waterloo Region. Access to healthcare continues to be one of the most important issues impacting our businesses, workforce, and overall community well-being. And we're proud to help support solutions that will strengthen our region for the future. We invite you to join us in supporting this effort. And we couldn't do this without the support of the Waterloo Region Health Network Foundation, so a big thank you to their team for their ongoing support on this initiative. I now have the pleasure of introducing our first speaker for this morning's program. The Honourable Carolyn Mulroney was first elected the MPP for York Simcoe in 2018. Minister Mulroney serves as President of Ontario's Treasury Board, a position she has held since 2023. While ensuring the government delivers value to taxpayers through responsible fiscal management, Minister Mulroney is involved in implementing Ontario's ambitious capital plan, mobilizing investments to build highways, transit, homes, broadband, and other critical infrastructure that support economic growth and quality of life. She also oversees the Ontario Public Service, working to make it more efficient and accountable. At Treasury Board, she works closely with the Minister of Public and Business Service Delivery and Procurement to ensure Ontario's digital and data governance, including the responsible use of artificial intelligence in government, which helps ensure transparency, accountability, and public trust in technology. Minister Mulroney also served as Minister of Transportation, overseeing the largest transit expansion in Ontario's history. She's also served as Attorney General, advancing key justice reforms and improving access to legal services. Before entering public life, Minister Mulroney built a successful career in business and law. She and her husband, Andrew, have 4 children and a dog, Peanut. Please join me in welcoming Minister Mulroney.
Ian, thank you very much for that very kind introduction and for the shout out to Peanut. He loves that always. Good morning, everyone. It's really wonderful to be here in Kitchener. I'm so pleased to be joined by my great colleague, MPP Jess Dixon, the MPP for Kitchener South Hespeler. If you know Jess, you know that she is a very passionate advocate for her constituents and her constituency at Queen's Park, and also for other issues that matter to her, especially for victims of intimate partner violence. And she does a tremendous job at Queen's Park. And so if she's your MPP, you're truly lucky to have her, and I'm blessed to be able to serve with her. So Jess, thanks for being here today. So let me thank the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce and the Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium for bringing us together this morning for this very important summit. For 140 years, this chamber has championed the businesses of this region. And EMC supports 18,000 manufacturers and 700,000 workers across the country. So thank you both for the great work that you do on behalf of your members. We are living through a period of economic and geopolitical uncertainty. For nearly 4 decades, both Canada and the United States have benefited from free trade. Our economies are deeply integrated. Free trade has brought prosperity on both sides of our border. To understand how deeply integrated we are, you only have to look at Ontario. If Ontario were a country, we would be America's 3rd largest trading partner, with nearly $500 billion in two-way trade every year. We are the #1 export market for 15 states and the #2 export market for 12 states. Now, as we all know, last year, things changed dramatically. And while CUSMA still covers most goods, the tariffs on steel, aluminum, and autos are felt right across Ontario and Canada. They are felt by large manufacturers and small businesses alike. But the hardest part for everyone is the unpredictability. Businesses run on stability and confidence. And right now, our largest trading partner is offering the opposite. And yet, yesterday I attended an event hosted by the Brampton Board of Trade, where an RBC economist presented the bank's latest outlook on the Canadian economy. She titled it Cautious Optimism. RBC describes an economy that has proven more resilient than many of us had thought we would be a year ago. Now, after the year that we've all had, I'll take cautious optimism. The signs are real. Per person GDP rose last year for the first time in 3 years, and exports are climbing again. But I know that many businesses in this room and across Ontario, for you, it does not feel that way. A national number can turn the corner long before your own order book does. Business owners remain worried. The ground is still not solid. Until there is a resolution on CUSMA and until the 232 tariffs are lifted, we cannot take anything for granted. And we, our government, we will keep managing our economy according to that principle. We will keep doing the work to make our economy more resilient. Resilience is not just about absorbing a blow. It's about coming out of a disruption stronger and more self-reliant than you were when you went into it. And there is no better place in this province or in this country to make that case than right here in Kitchener-Waterloo. Waterloo Region is one of Ontario's and Canada's great economic engines. Manufacturing is at its heart. Nearly 1,800 companies, more than $6 billion in annual revenue, and over 57,000 jobs. This is Canada's 4th largest manufacturing sector. What makes it remarkable is the kind of manufacturing. Advanced manufacturing, where the factory floor is wired to the research lab. This is also Quantum Valley, and home to the Perimeter Institute, Communitech, Cohere, to the University of Waterloo, which contributes nearly $7 billion a year to Ontario's economy. It's one ecosystem, and among the most competitive advantages that this province has. So where does the provincial government fit into all of this? Well, as president of the Treasury Board, my job is to manage the province's spending and to make sure that your hard-earned tax dollars deliver value. And if you think that sounds really exciting, when I explained it to my 18-year-old daughter what I did, she said, wow, how do you spell it? Treasury, B-O-R-E-D? Premier Ford calls me the gatekeeper. And I don't think he means it as a compliment, but he says it with a smile, so I take it as one. But he's not wrong. And since 2018, we have been prudent fiscal managers of the public purse. 8 clean audit opinions, 2 credit rating upgrades, and the leanest public service in the country. Across the country, other governments are responding to tariffs by cutting. we've made a different choice. Because we've managed carefully when times were good, we can invest now in the companies and the workers who need it most. That's the whole point to prudence, to be ready. As the Premier says, businesses create jobs. Governments don't, or at least they shouldn't. Government's job is to create the conditions for growth and competition, and then to get out of your way. And that is what we have done. We have cut red tape relentlessly, lowering the annual cost of doing business in Ontario by more than $12 billion. We've lowered taxes. In Budget 2026, we cut the small business tax rate by almost a third to 2.2%, worth up to $5,000 a year for more than 375,000 businesses across the province. We cut fees on government services. And as Premier Ford has said over and over again, we will never raise a tax. We are matching the federal write-offs on new equipment, so instead of deducting a machine's cost slowly over the years, you can write off the full amount in the first year. That frees up cash today and lowers the real cost of modernizing and allows you to stay more competitive. And it's working. For 4 years running, Ontario has been ranked the most competitive province in Canada for business investment. When businesses needed help to weather the tariffs, we provided it. Since last April, nearly $30 billion in relief and support for Ontario workers and businesses through liquidity supports and tax deferrals. For the sectors hardest hit, steel, aluminum, auto, the Protect Ontario financing program is putting up to $1 billion in working capital to work. And through the Protect Ontario account, we will invest $4 billion alongside Ontario's pension funds to back strategic industries and build more self-reliant supply chains at home. And the investments are flowing. Agnico Eagle's $14 billion investment last week, and more than $35 billion last year from 750 different companies. But the deeper lesson of this past year is simple. Resilience means depending less on any single market and building more of what we need ourselves. That's why we passed the Buy Ontario Act, and it's why Treasury Board adopted a procurement directive to put Ontario-made goods and services first in our $220 billion capital plan and the billions of dollars that the province spends on goods and services every year in the Ontario Public Service and across the broader public sector. We are helping companies bring production and supply chains back home. Our export markets beyond the United States are up 17% since last year and 75% since 2018. And we are tearing down trade barriers between our provinces, scrapping every one of Ontario's exceptions under the National Free Trade Agreement. Now there's one more opportunity that we don't want to miss. Security is now an industrial strategy, and Ontario has already a very serious defense sector worth $5 billion a year across 300 companies, and it is ready to mobilize. Canada was chosen to be the host of the new Defence, Security and Resilience Bank, and Ontario is making the case to bring it here. A bank like this needs to sit close to capital, talent, and advanced manufacturing, and that is exactly what KW offers. Now we know that none of this works without infrastructure, and we are building it. Here, that means the new Highway 7 between Kitchener and Guelph, the widening of Highway 401, and a new daily Kitchener Go round trip to Stratford starting in July. On healthcare, it means roughly $64 billion over the next decade, more than 50 hospital projects, including the new Waterloo Regional Health Network. And above all, it means housing. You cannot attract talent or keep your own young people in a region or in a province where they cannot afford to live. Housing is a competitiveness issue. Alongside the federal government, we've taken the full HST off the purchase of a new home worth as much as $130,000 to a new buyer. And we've committed $8.8 billion to help municipalities cut development charges by up to half. Together, those measures can take up as much as $200,000 off the cost of a new home. Our hope is simple: shovels back in the ground, stalled projects moving again, and a home within reach of the people who are building our province's future. But the single most important investment we can make is in people. Ontario has one of the most skilled workforces in the world, with more than 86,000 STEM graduates every year, and we're adding more than 20,000 more seats with a $750 million investment. But it's not just about degrees and AI labs. The people who are building everything that I have described are in the skilled trades. Hundreds of thousands of tradespeople across Ontario are set to retire in this next decade. If we do not fill that gap, every other ambition stalls. So we are expanding apprenticeships and training, and we are opening the trades to more people, including the women still far too rare on too many job sites, which is something I know that this chamber has pushed for. The goal is simple. It's not simply to weather these tariffs and hope that we get back to where we started. Our ambition is to come out of this more competitive and more self-reliant than we were when it began. The road ahead is not easy, and real challenges remain. RBC's phrase was cautious optimism. Mine is a little different. What I feel is confidence. The confidence is grounded in the work that we have done and the results it has already produced. We were careful with the public purse so we could invest when times got hard. We cleared the path for businesses to grow, and we are building a more self-reliant economy right here at home. We've done the hard work to meet this moment. Now we will build through it with partners. And I believe we will come out of this stronger. So thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to our conversation. Merci beaucoup. J'ai hâte à la conversation.
Safer than it sounds.
Trap door or something?
No, there's no trap door. Well, thank you for your remarks, Minister, and thank you for making time to come down to not only speak to us, but I know you've got a full day of events here in Waterloo Region.
I just want to thank you for inviting me, because as you heard the description of my job, the invitations to speak kind of dried up after I was Minister of Transportation.
Well, you touch everything, so.
Well, when you're Minister of Transportation, you're very popular. Everyone wants you to come to their community to see a road or a transit project that's stalled so that you'll help, you'll advocate for funding it. And when you're President of the Treasury Board, nobody knows what you do. So anyway, thank you for the invitation.
Well, thank you for educating us. But the last time we were together for a meeting was actually during the pandemic, and you were Minister of Transportation, and you were announcing, as only one can remember back in those days, $1.2 billion investment in all-day two-way GO service between Kitchener and Toronto. And so thank you for that. We know that we've seen the service as it continues to grow, and the importance of our friends from Communitech are here, and WDC and all these manufacturers. The moving of people back and forth between Toronto and Waterloo Region is tremendously important. So that's been an
if I can
investment.
just say thank you, and the members should know that this chamber and others along that are along the corridor were instrumental in securing that. I mean, they were tremendous advocates, and by tremendous I mean incredibly persistent all the time. And I don't know how many meetings the Ministry of Transportation had with the Connect the Corridor
Yes.
group, which was a group of chambers who are advocating for better and enhanced GO Rail service to KW. So congratulations to you on making it happen, because it was really through your advocacy.
Well, we knew that all the staff knew of anyone that came down here that they had to take what I call the ethanol pledge, which is we're supportive of all-day two-way GO service. So, listen, Peanut's always got a friend here in Waterloo Region, because Bailey always likes a shout out, who's my dog. And we both look very young. For people that may not know, first time we met was in 1983 in my parents' basement during a leadership race that led to historic positive changes for Canada. And when you think about free trade agreement, acid rain, anti-apartheid, the Mulroney government years, of which my dad was part of, but that takes us back a long time. You were very young. I was only slightly older.
I was just a little bit. I don't remember the age gap being that big. But I do remember, if you grow up in politics, you attend a lot of political events. And when you're 9, 10, 11, doesn't matter, 14, sometimes they're interesting, sometimes they're not. But getting to come to Oktoberfest on a regular basis was a great amount of fun for me and my brothers. And so we always held warm memories of our time here. And I will say, as my dad passed, someone did send me a video of me dancing with him, and I think it was in your basement, and so it's a great memory. And so I always love coming back to Kitchener.
Well, let's turn to manufacturing and the opportunities that across southwestern Ontario and southern Ontario as a manufacturing corridor. How do you see the investments that you talked about in your remarks, the government's making to try and incent manufacturing supply chain to be the engine and take the opportunity that's before us that Trump and tariffs have put forward? Is we need resilient supply chains. We need to reshore as much as we can. What are the opportunities you see in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, because things are so unpredictable, it's hard to say what those opportunities will be. All I can speak to is what we're trying to do as a government. And I hope that in my speech, what I was trying to communicate is that we have been prudent fiscal managers for a reason, so that we could keep our powder dry, so that we could be there when times were hard. Unfortunately, this is the second time we've hit a crisis. The first, obviously, was COVID, and so we had to make significant investments to keep people afloat during COVID. And now here we are again with this unpredictable, it's just an unpredictable policy world. I was in Essex last month attending an Essex Chamber of Commerce event, meeting with business owners, obviously mostly in the auto sector and the supply chain around auto, and deeply affected by tariffs, by the 232 tariffs. And while we were in the meeting, a business owner got a message that they had changed one of the tariffs and how it was applied. So instead of being applied directly only to the good, the tariff was applied to the entire purchase order. And so a tariff that was $1,600 when the meeting started was now $65,000 for him. And so managing that is something that you all have to deal with. And so, what we want to do is try to provide as much predictability as your government that we can, so that we have a regime that you can believe in. And so when you want to invest, you have confidence in the rules. We want to make, I talked about red tape reduction, saving $12 billion over the last 8 years for businesses. Reducing friction for businesses, especially small businesses, is very important. Large corporations have huge compliance departments to deal with red tape. Smaller and medium companies have to take on that work themselves, and that's time they're not spending on their actual job and on the things that they want to do and they need to do to grow their business. So red tape reduction and predictability, providing incentives through our tax system, providing grants when necessary, using our balance sheet to provide loans if that's something that you need. So trying to support our manufacturing sector as we go through this, and also advocating to our federal government, which I know chambers and different associations groups do to the federal government to talk about what Ontario's priorities are. And, they're doing their best to represent all of Canada. We have to make sure that our priorities are reflected in their agenda when they're negotiating with the American government.
So what are the things, as we think about domestic supply chains, whether it's in auto or food processing, advanced manufacturing, precision automation, right across southwestern Ontario there is opportunities for procurement in a variety of different ways to incent actually getting small and medium-sized business, which is the vast majority of business. What do you think those how do we strengthen those domestic supply chains so that more of the businesses sitting here, that we're using the power of the federal government? When we think about defense, shipbuilding, all the big things, but a lot of the procurement that Ontario is doing to build hospitals and all of the infrastructure. How do we use procurement to make sure those supply chains are Ontario based?
That's where Treasury Board comes in. Now you all know now you can understand. All spending has to come above a certain threshold through Treasury Board. And we implemented a directive that requires ministries that are seeking approval for a contract or procurement for a contract, that they go to Ontario companies first, Canadians second, and then if they cannot do that, they have to give good, reasonable grounds for why that was not possible. We've even put the Canadian flag, the maple leaf, on our documentation to remind people that that is our priority. So we have a $220 billion 10-year capital plan to build roads and highways, bridges, hospitals, schools. And so that applies in that context. So everything that Infrastructure Ontario is doing, the Ministry of Health is doing, they all have to buy Ontario first or buy Canada second. Through Supply Ontario, which manages the $30 billion spend every year from the Ontario Public Service and the broader public sector for goods and services. So anything, if you're buying speakers or scaffolding or anything that you need, also is required to follow that procurement directive and the Buy Ontario Act. So we think by regulating, legislating, and requiring this through our process, we are directing people to our domestic supply chain, and we hope that that will help build that resilience and keep our supply chains strong. We know that there is a domestic supply chain premium, and so the taxpayer will in some cases be paying more, and we're looking to that, and we'll be transparent about that going forward, but we think that's a price worth paying at this time. So we can do it by in that way, and then also trying to attract businesses here. So filling in the gaps in our supply chain where we don't have a complete one, and that's where the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, through our great Minister Vic Fideli, who's flying around the world all the time, to attract investment, to tell the story about why Ontario is a great place to do business. It's predictable, it's stable, great healthcare, great education, all this. Come set up your company here. We want you, create jobs, and be part of our manufacturing ecosystem. And so I think there are different ways that we can address this. And if anybody has other ideas about things that we should be thinking about, one of the reasons I like attending these kinds of events is you're all experts in your field, and hopefully you'll filter some of your ideas up through us, and you can speak to Jess, because we're trying to work in a very unpredictable world, and so trying to keep up with it, and always looking for new ideas.
Well, Vic is coming at the end of June, so we'll tell him to come prepared to follow up on your conversations. Talent is hugely important to the manufacturing world, supply chain, and connecting that with post-secondaries. And I know you made an investment in the post-secondary and college system, which is important. Skilled trades, if we're going to build all the things you've talked about, whether it's transportation, healthcare infrastructure, roads, water, take your pick, all of the things that we need if we're going to grow and have those, we need the skilled trades for housing in particular. and having the right skills for young people coming out of, how do you balance those two things? Because that's really, there has been over the last number of years a skills mismatch of what are the jobs that are evolving, and do we have the young talent workforce to take those. Investing in post-secondary and the college system, connecting to having the right talent for the right jobs. How do you connect those two pieces as government? Because they're connected for business.
Yeah, that's an important point, and we do that by making sure that the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of Colleges and Universities and Infrastructure Ontario and other capital ministries are all connected and all talking. When I was Minister of Transportation in my early days, we were looking at one of our big capital projects. I think it was a transit expansion, probably the one in the city of Toronto. And one of the reasons for the costs being much higher than I thought they would be was labor shortage. And so we were working with Infrastructure Ontario and through Metrolinx on identifying all the skills and the number of people we were going to need to deliver on one of the lines. And it was very detailed. Metrolinx and IO went through all of the kinds of jobs, skilled trades that were needed, and then took that and went to the ministry, and then brought that forward to colleges and universities. It's since then, as we've gotten actually much more sophisticated about it, we have an agency called Skilled Trades Ontario that is dedicated to overseeing that when it comes to existing public infrastructure. So we have that data ourselves, and then we work with industry groups to understand what the private sector needs, and union groups. All of those, all of these groups are feeding information to our skilled trades and apprenticeship programs, and we've made significant investments in skills development. As you know, we want to have 1 million new skilled trades people in Ontario, and so we've been working on that. We're also recruiting from elsewhere, from across Canada, and and around the world, getting rid of the requirement that you have Canadian work experience so that you can get to work right away. So it's a plan that has different approaches, but really communication between industry and government is key to us being able to train the workers that you need.
Ontario has very strong innovation assets, and we're again right here in Communitech, lots of innovators, lots of startups across the board, but adoption for small and medium-sized business is a struggle. Whether you think about automation or AI, advanced technologies for manufacturers can be a struggle, particularly if you're smaller, and that's one of those issues that I think this government, certainly more than previous governments that in the 17 years I've been at the Chamber, when we say small business, many businesses would be, 1,600 members, 80% of our members have 20 employees or less. And that's the same right across the country and not just Ontario. How do we make sure that we're making it accessible for small business to make those decisions to invest in the things that are going to help us be more competitive, like in AI and other enabling technologies?
Well, I think talking about AI in Kitchener-Waterloo, you're probably all experts on it. I'm new to it. I have been trying to learn as much as possible over the last few years. I learned my first kind of exposure to it was in the healthcare sector, where I learned about a product called ChartWatch that a hospital had adopted to manage the staffing of nurses. So it took all the data around weather events, traffic patterns, Jays games, Raptors games, you name it, put it into their data algorithm, and used it to better plan their nurses' hours and when you brought nurses on, when you needed them. And what it did is it made for happier staff because they weren't being called in when they weren't needed. They weren't understaffed. They managed that, but it also saved the province the hospital $1 million. So here you got better health outcomes and better value for money. So I think that there's tremendous opportunity for businesses large and small to adopt AI and find ways to get better outcomes, whatever sector you're in, and save money. But at the same time, it's going so quickly. And when it comes to government, we hold very sensitive data. And so we have to be very careful when we roll out technology. Nobody thinks of government as terribly innovative. I wish there are ways in which we could be much more innovative. But because of the kind of data we hold, we have to be careful about it. And so when we have rolled out our use of AI, we've really focused on low-risk use cases, looking at fraud in the Ministry of Finance, testing soil and agriculture. So there are things that we've rolled out slowly, chatbots, things like that. We had Stephen Crawford, who's the Minister of Public Service and Business Delivery and Procurement, and I co-hosted the province's first, and I think it was a government in Canada's first AI summit. And it brought together leaders from the industry, including from KW, to Toronto. And we heard exactly what you said, is that small to medium-sized companies in Ontario are very slow to adopt. And they did not understand why. So I don't actually have an answer to it yet, other than I think based on our experience in government, as we've been trying to roll it out and use it, we want to be very careful about the sensitivity of our data. You also want to be very careful about the businesses that you've grown and you're worried about the risk. What I can say is in our government, we work on directives to help identify how we use AI. The number one rule is no AI in secret. So people know how it's used. That transparency is important to maintaining public trust with respect to their data and how we transact with Ontarians for government services. So I think, it's everywhere. I'm sure everyone's now getting used to ChatGPT and Claude, and I think that as people in their personal lives get more comfortable with it and see the opportunities, but also start identifying what their risks are, then they'll feel more comfortable applying it to their businesses and their livelihood. But the benefit you have here is that you can bring the leaders in AI in the world directly to this stage to help small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses in your area apply it in a way that they're comfortable with.
I'm seeing waving arms in the background, which means my staff are telling me that we got 5 minutes. So I want to get to two more questions before we wrap up. We've talked about the importance of housing and healthcare in communities. The infrastructure that you talked about, that you've made investments in, all-day two-way go, Highway 7, transit infrastructure, all really important for communities so that people don't have to drive to their work, or that the services they need are more local. But a big part of that and how it impacts business is moving goods to market, or whether it's from a supply chain to a plant that's going to do the assembly. Really important for movement of goods and people across southern Ontario. You've made some of those investments. That in making sure we get goods to market in the right time is an incredibly important. And speaking of your ministry, it crosses transportation, it crosses healthcare, it crosses the housing file. How does the government look? When you're having those discussions, how do you try and pull all those threads together?
Well, we talk about the economic importance of transportation and our transportation network all the time. We try to distill it down to how much time it saves commuters and how much it will save businesses. And I represent a riding called York Simcoe. It has 3 municipalities, Bradford, West Gwillimbury, East Gwillimbury, and Georgina. And we are building a highway that's about 16 kilometers long that's going to connect the 400 to the 404, and it goes right through my riding. And the reason for this infrastructure is because we have the Holland Marsh right in Bradford, East Gwillimbury, and part of Georgina, so right touching on all 3 municipalities. There are over 100 farms, and we have 60% of the carrot and onion production for Canada right there. It's the salad bowl of Ontario. And those roads are so old. And so as these communities have grown, East Gwillimbury was the fastest growing community in Canada, and Bradford was the second fastest in Ontario for a few years. But the roads were local roads and regional roads never really kept up with it. And so getting those goods to market for those farmers was just getting harder and more expensive. And so economic opportunity, economic growth is directly tied to that piece of infrastructure. And I hear it from our farmers, I hear it from the municipalities all the time, and I know that for you here, that is important. I mean, the Connect the Corridor, one of the arguments that Connect the Corridor was making for the investment in two-way all-day go was to get talent moving back and forth, to get your workforce, to give the opportunity to expand so you could live wherever you wanted to live and work wherever you wanted to work in this very convenient way. And that connection would help you attract talent from outside of Ontario. So it's really important that we have a high-functioning, modern highway and transit network to support our economy. I think they go hand in hand, and so does that's our government's view.
Okay, last question, and you talked in your remarks global insecurity or uncertainty, I guess the word I'm looking for. There's a real opportunity with the federal government's announcement of huge investments for an extended period of time in defense, and some of that is going to use civil and innovation and technologies that are right here in southwestern Ontario. We think about robotics and drones and unmanned vehicles, ground-based types of transportation, and we've already seen some of big announcement with Colt Canada locally here. How are you approaching making sure that Ontario businesses are seeing the opportunity for it's not pure national defense procurement like for fighters or other things, although that could be part of it, but there's many different aspects of what we already do and have expertise in southern Ontario. How are you working to make sure Ontario businesses know that opportunity is here, Ontario is going to support it, and you're taking that message to the federal government?
I think it's important to see see the defense industry as a spectrum, a full sector, and look at the entire supply chain, and define it broadly. We, as I mentioned in my remarks, Canada was chosen to have the seat of the Defense Bank, Defense Resilience Security Bank, and Ontario is bidding against other cities. So we're bidding against Montreal, I think Vancouver. We're not sure if Ottawa, because we've made a pitch for Toronto, but we've made a pitch that it should be in Ontario because we are the financial capital, we have the talent, we have over 300 companies in the defense sector. Mm-hmm. And after some conversations I've had over the last few weeks with people in Kitchener-Waterloo and in Toronto on quantum computing and AI and around data centers and energy, I've made the point to Peter Bethlenfalvy, who's our Minister of Finance and who's putting together our application for Toronto, that we really need to define Toronto broadly and include this region, because I think that you are actually key to that, giving us that differential that we need against Montreal or other cities that are competing, because of how tied you are to the defense opportunity. Especially, if you look yesterday, the American government, the White House announced a $2 billion investment in quantum, that they are taking equity stakes in, I think, 9 companies. $1 billion of that is going directly to IBM, and the rest is going to 8 other companies, because they see that as tied directly to their security interest. And so we want to make sure that we're not behind, and that's why I think having a KW voice as we're putting that together is important. But it's really, I think, to the point of your question, is thinking about the defense sector as a very broad spectrum and making sure that all people who contribute are part of that, and then through that bank we'll be able to support the sector in a meaningful way.
And I think many of the businesses here can pivot and take the expertise they have to those new markets, much like happened during COVID when businesses were pivoting. Listen, we're out of time. Thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing your thoughts with the group. I'd like to, just as we exit the stage, I'd like to invite Adam Diamond, Vice President, National Benefits Consulting with the Cowen Insurance Group, to the stage. Adam and the team at Cowan are great supporters of our chamber and our membership, and he'll share a few words on behalf of Cowan and help introduce our next panel. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Minister. It's probably hard to imagine back 2 kids in a basement that you would have come this far to this moment today. In the region, the optimism is decidedly not cautious. Conditions for growth are readily apparent, and in this room, I think everybody appreciates how important the Ontario Made initiatives are. The Minister mentioned the support for technological adoption and AI, and the support that these businesses will need in order to grow, and that's where we find ourselves with our first panel. The Cowan Insurance Group has been partnering with the Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce for 40 years, delivering significant value to its members. We're particularly proud to sponsor today's event and lend our support to the manufacturing sector as it goes through a period of significant transformation. The energy and opportunity in this sector and the region are the best that I have seen. I now have the privilege of introducing our speakers for our first panel discussion. The panel will explore how manufacturers can leverage emerging technologies and remain globally competitive in a rapidly changing economy. Our first panelist is Jill Anderson, Senior Business Advisor, Technology at BDC. Jill brings 25 years experience in technology, strategy, evaluation, and implementation with a focus over the past decade supporting Canada's fast-growing small-medium enterprise sector. At BDC, Jill helps entrepreneurs plan and adopt digital solutions and AI. Jill is a certified Scrum Master, a product owner, and holds a certificate in Agile Project Management from the University of Toronto, as well as a BBA from Wilfrid Laurier University. Big cheers in the front. Next is Chris McLean, Senior Manager of Human Resources at Toyota Manufacturing Canada. He's responsible for strategic workforce planning, talent acquisition, and talent development. In his role, Chris leads the development of strategies related to recruitment, the forecasting and planning of labor, employee retention and employee development, succession planning to meet current and future business objectives. Our final panelist is Greta Kudelenko, CEO and co-founder of Acerta AI, a provider of AI-driven manufacturing process and quality intelligence solutions for automotive and discrete manufacturers. Since co-founding the company in 2017, Greta has worked extensively with global manufacturers to help improve production quality, reduce process variability, and accelerate operational intelligence initiatives across the factory floor. Greta was named to Forbes 30 Under 30 for manufacturing. She has been recognized as an industry all-star and as a Canadian to watch by Automotive News Canada. Moderating this conversation is Gavin Fitzpatrick, Market Development Manager at Waterloo Development Corporation, also known as Waterloo EDC. A graduate of Conestoga College, Gavin has held executive sales and business development roles in tech, consulting, and real estate industries. Please join me in welcoming Gavin, Greta, Chris, and Jill.
Thanks. Thank you for the warm introduction, Chris. I appreciate that, and I'm really interested to have this conversation this morning in my work with Waterloo EDC, attracting companies and working with our local companies to help them grow. The topic that we're going to discuss today is front and center in almost everything we do. So I'd also like to thank you all for being here today. I appreciate that. Before we dive into the broader discussion, I'd like to get a quick snapshot from each of you. You're all approaching manufacturing in very different ways, and I'd like to, maybe starting with you, Chris, hear about how you approach this topic and what's a major trend you're currently seeing in your work that you think will have the biggest impact on the companies that you deal with over the next few years?
Yeah. Anyways, thank you for inviting me and letting me join in today's discussion. But I think I would, being in at Toyota and being in HR, one of the biggest shifts we're seeing overall is just right now the pace of technological change and the growing number of tools that are now available for manufacturing to use to try to, improve automation and improve efficiencies. But while those like digital systems, advanced technologies are evolving really quickly, I think the real challenge is not just simply adopting the latest and greatest technology. It's about identifying where the investments are going to create the most meaningful value. So, like for us, we're a pretty pragmatic company, and we're focused on trying to make more thoughtful, targeted investments in areas where we see that are going to help our overall company KPIs, making us more efficient, improving our quality, improving the safety for our team members, and just helping our team members develop and become more effective in their roles. So we're taking a pretty practical approach and implementing change gradually, and investing where we know it's going to add some value to our operation and to our people. And maybe I'll also kind of add a few other things about, from a workforce perspective, technology is simply not just about replacing people. As was already kind of mentioned today, we're always going to need skilled and engaged team members in order for our operations to thrive. What's changing, though, is the nature of those skills, and the skills that are needed are changing fairly rapidly. We're moving from just simply task-based work to much more work that is system-focused, focused on problem-solving, more technical than it was in the past. So with that, the importance of having skills like adaptability, technical capabilities is more needed for our team members. So like ultimately we see kind of manufacturing careers becoming more dynamic, knowledge-based, and the workforce development needs to evolve alongside the technology as it's evolving, so that people have the skills to succeed, not just today, but in the future.
And as those roles evolve as well, making sure they can keep up with that. And so Jill, within your portfolio of companies, how do you address that question?
So at the BDC, we're dealing with hundreds, thousands of companies, and I work with a group of team across the country. So it's nice to be able to listen to what they're experiencing, and nothing like walking a shop floor with your clients to understand, what's happening. And I think there's two themes that really stand out for me. The first one is convergence, and the second one is collaboration. On the convergence side, I'm going to use like a whole lot of buzzwords and terminology here, but automation, robotics, machine learning. I mean, those things have actually been around for quite a long time, and they've existed on shop floors. Certainly I was saying I toured the Toyota plant over 20 years ago, and there was certainly a lot of that there. But I think what we're seeing is the convergence of those things with artificial intelligence, and pulling all that together. What we're going to see, what we have, is a phenomenal amount of data. And we can take that data and drive new insights, not just to describe what we're seeing, not just to explain, what we've seen, but to get to predictive levels of what we can see on the shop floor, or what we should be seeing, or what we might see, and then getting to prescriptive levels in terms of, what should we be doing better to drive quality, to drive productivity. So that first one is convergence. The second thing that we're seeing is collaboration. And that is augmenting the human aspect of what's happening in operations with robotics. Seeing people and robotics working side by side, each of them learning to anticipate what the other one is going to do, each of them complementing what the other one can do, really protecting the skills, the knowledge, those really engaged workers that are key to your success, and alleviating some of the more mundane physical aspects of it, so that it becomes a true collaboration. So I think those are the two things that we're seeing, and we're excited to see a lot more of. Yeah.
That's great, thanks. And of course, Greta, I mean, you're the one dealing with a lot of the data that's coming off the shop floor and connecting all of this together. So where do you see the big trends heading that you're facing right now?
Yeah, so we've been in business now since 2017. So really started off as a research group out of the University of Waterloo and transitioned into more commercial applications of AI and machine learning in manufacturing now for years. A lot of what we're seeing similar is we started a lot of our applications in machine learning and AI, more traditional capabilities that we've been introducing into production over the years. And I'd say the big shifts that we're seeing in the last year or two, and really with the presence of Gen AI, it's really a lot of manufacturers are starting to again double down on applications of AI. So forming dedicated teams to look into that application and having really even outside of just leadership on the production floor, more of an open mind of how to integrate those. So it's funny with some of the applications of Gen AI now, more traditional machine learning is starting to seem more safe on production floors. So we're finding that's starting to accelerate. And really there's a lot of that is driven just by this technological shifts in the desire to stay on top of it, but really a lot of it is also driven by competitive pressure right now. So we're seeing also a lot of competitive pressure, especially with some of the more Asian-based manufacturers, to try to innovate so that from our manufacturing base, the suppliers are continuing to be competitive and efficient in driving, quality rates such that, their margins are staying as high as possible. So we're seeing a lot of that transition where data and AI are becoming more and more ingrained in day-to-day operations, and that's becoming a norm.
That's great, thank you. So as I mentioned, at Waterloo EDC, we're always connecting with both local and international companies who are looking at investing in new capabilities. And the focus these days is very much on productivity, technology adoption, and future readiness. So Jill, from your perspective, what separates manufacturers that are positioned for long-term success from those that are at risk from falling behind?
So I think the way to protect against that, and where, let's look at the definition of success. And from our lens, it's those that are looking at continuous investment. We've always talked about continuous improvement in terms of operation efficiency, but now let's really talk about investment. Two areas, on the equipment and machinery and automation side, and also on the digital flow. Our chief economist had a task force study our most productive businesses, and what they found is that the most productive businesses that we work with invest more than 1.5 times in terms of machinery and equipment, and 1.8 times on digital side of things, so the physical and the digital side. And I think that's really going to help drive productivity and efficiency. I think that is key. I think, the coming together of technology, process, and people. On the process side, the businesses that we find that are aligning with hubs of innovation, centers of research. You heard me kind of do a bit of a shout out there to Golden Hawks. I'm a second of 3 generation Laurier grads, and we're hyper aware of Waterloo down the road as being some of the most sought after grads in the world from an engineering and comp sci perspective. I think, aligning yourselves in those hubs, those innovation centers, they can, kind of feed off each other. That's what they were designed to do, to be symbiotic, to take research onto the shop floor and learn from it. So I think that's going to be key. And I think data-driven organizations that not just I worry about the customers that come and they're like, we're missing the boat on AI. It's all about AI. Well, yes, but it needs to be strategic, and it needs to be data driven. So, where do you feel like it's going to have the most impact in your business? Let's, understand and move about it in reasonable ways.
Great, thank you. So obviously, sitting here in Waterloo, the automotive sector is one of the strongest examples of advanced manufacturing in Canada. And as that industry transitions towards electrification and next-gen production systems, Chris, how is Toyota approaching workforce development to ensure that your team members have got the skills for increasingly advanced and automated production environments? You touched on this at the beginning, but I think maybe a little more depth.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and maybe I'll kind of start by saying at Toyota, we start with a sort of simple belief that technology should support people. It shouldn't replace them. Manufacturing continues to evolve, and we're always going to need, skilled and engaged team members. But what's going to be changing is the nature of their roles, as we move forward into the future. And our focus, we used the word continuous a couple times, but our focus has been on continuous learning. We try to take a proactive approach and make sure, that we're investing early in continuous learning and upskilling of our team members so they can grow as the work evolves. While we're obviously increasing building capability around things like robotics, advanced maintenance, troubleshooting, the use of digital tools, it's really just as important, as we found, to continue to focus on some of our core capabilities, like the Toyota problem-solving approach to things, adaptability, continuous improvement, thinking or skills. Because those types of skills is what's been foundational to Toyota and what's brought us success to this point. And those don't really change. They still need to be applied as we sort of evolve into kind of new technologies. And has already been touched on a couple times, skilled trades is kind of critical to our success as well. And that's why we continue to partner with colleges, training institutions. We have a robust apprenticeship program. We have about almost 80 apprentices in our system right now, and that's really done to help build that sort of future talent pipeline, or make sure we have that talent pipeline still there. So, ultimately, our goal is about ensuring our team members are prepared not only for the jobs of today, but of course the jobs of tomorrow as well.
And yeah, I really appreciate that people first approach. I think that's really critical as we look to blend the workforce between people and machines. So continuing on that theme, many manufacturers are bringing in technologies while also managing an aging workforce and skilled labor shortages I think we're all aware of. How is Toyota approaching workforce planning and knowledge transfer during this period?
Yeah, it is. Anyways, it is an interesting time, and we're trying to navigate through a period of multiple transitions at once, right? Changing technology. You mentioned the shifting demographics and the evolving skill requirements that I've already touched on, and that kind of makes workforce planning, more important than ever. This year at TMMC is kind of particularly meaningful for us because we just sort of celebrated our 40 years since our first groundbreaking. And with that history, it kind of also comes, retirement wave, which I hope to be kind of part of that group as well. Anyway, but with that, there's highly skilled team members that are going to be beginning to leave the workforce. So preserving their knowledge and transferring it, to the future generations is critical. But at the same time, having to prepare for the future is kind of a major priority for us. And I think we do a pretty good job of taking a deliberate approach to succession planning. Like, we're continually looking at who are the people that could be retiring in the near future, what are our most critical jobs, where are high potential people, and making sure that we're having discussions and getting them the right development they need to sort of fill those roles going into the future. And one thing we're particularly proud of at Toyota is we really develop our leadership from within. We're not hiring managers and from outside the company. We're developing them internally, and that long-term commitment to people builds trust, and it makes people want to build a long-term career with us. And then, and with that, knowledge transfer is, as I mentioned, is critically important. So how do you take the knowledge that the more veteran team members have, transfer that to the younger workforce? But at the same time, you've got a lot of skills, digital fluency and stuff that the younger generation has. So what we're actually seeing and trying to encourage is becoming more of a two-way street. And I've got a lot of younger people in my group. I've kind of given them AI tools to use, and I'm constantly learning from them, like things that they've figured out of how to make their job more efficient or improve the quality of the work that they're doing. And I'm always saying, hey, show me how to do that. So we're really seeing that kind of two-way learning taking place. And then just training in general is kind of, has always been at the forefront of our priorities. I think last year alone, we did over 130,000 hours of training for, our entire workforce. So that continues to be a strong commitment of ours. And another thing kind of in this topic that I wanted to highlight is we kind of also recognized early Industry 4.0 it was going to require new capabilities, and that's why we've partnered with Conestoga College. We have the Toyota Smart Factory, and that's, again, building on that same idea, right? It's helping, the students develop the skills for the future, but it's also helping our workforce kind of see what's, the newest and emerging trends. So anyways, ultimately, our focus is about balancing that experience with that future readiness and making sure that we're working together to kind of be in the right place. Yeah.
Along with, it sounds like significant investments in your workforce and training as well. So there's a lot of discussion around AI right now, but many manufacturers, especially the small and mid-sized ones, are still trying to understand what a practical adoption looks like on the shop floor. So Greta, from your perspective, where are manufacturers seeing the most immediate and measurable value from AI and data analytics today? And what are some of the misconceptions that you're still hearing from manufacturers about AI adoption?
Great question. So a lot of what we're kind of seeing is in larger companies. One thing that we've seen work very well is a very use case based approach. So really focus on a specific need, a specific application, and really focusing on optimizing that before trying to boil the ocean. Just to give you a more tangible example of that. So a lot of the time we see companies, they have a specific issue, like their end of line testing is not performing to the right degree, or their welding operation is generating more rework or issues than they would expect, or they have some degree of inefficiencies or throughput blockages in certain parts of their operations. So finding those critical areas oftentimes and focusing on those as primary applications, I think, is very critical. Otherwise, it often becomes like, hey, use AI for everything, try everything at once, and then you start to find little pitfalls in the data or in the readiness of the workforce in different areas, and some of these initiatives start to kind of feel like too much and too not going anywhere. So where we're seeing a lot of effectiveness is really if the manufacturers are focusing on certain key areas in their business where they will really see near-term ROI, and that way getting that buy-in early on. And especially whether you're a big manufacturer also or some of the smaller manufacturers, really where we see like a big pitfall is investing too much into data up front, to the point that you're basically spending years of just trying to gather more and more and more, and then at some point someone decides, okay, well, let's try to make use of it now since we've done so much effort, and you start finding, well, hey, the quality's not quite there, I need something else done. So starting early, iterating, and really being use case focused is what we've seen as the most effective way to really see adoption and see the ROI, so that you want to continue investing.
So sort of a crawl, walk, run rather than rush in and try and do it all?
Yes.
That's helpful, thank you. There's often a tendency to wait, whether because of economic uncertainty, capital costs, or fear of disruption. But at the same time, this is all moving really, really quickly. Like, global competitors are moving very, very fast right now. So what are the risks to manufacturers who delay investment in technology adoption these days?
I think if you're standing still, you're actually moving behind. I think is really where it's at, and I think that can become to the point pretty quickly of being unrecoverable. So I think what we need to think about is, if you're not investing in these ways, the first place you're going to feel it is declining quality. At that point, you're going to see higher wastes and lower profit margin. And it's not that you as a business, or maybe your quality has slipped. It's that everybody else's has gotten tighter with the use of some of the capabilities out there. So I think that's pretty pretty dire warning, and we'll start to be able to see that and measure it on bottom line pretty quickly. I think, in failing to adopt some of these technologies, you're going to really feel it on the labor side. So we know that workforce retirement, we're not ready for you to go yet, Chris, so hang on there on your planning. By failing to, capture the information from your more senior people, the more technically, or skilled sense, you're going to see a decline in your quality if you don't do something about harnessing that. And I think you're going to fail to attract the youngs, as we like to call them in our house, the people that, have walked around with tablets and phones, from the point at which they could do that. They all manage their lives on that thing, so they expect to come to work and have access to information in the same way. They're not ready to deal with paper travelers and time cards and that sort of thing. We really need to keep pace to keep their attention, to attract them and retain them. I think those are two pretty good examples of what we need to do to continue to move forward. And there's an adage, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is right now. So planting that digital tree and that automation tree now is never been more important. And there's lots of programs that we have to support that kind of investment.
Excellent. I think that's really true. I think there's also a bit of a split in the sense that large global manufacturers like Toyota have got dedicated and innovation teams. They've got resources, but a lot of our small and medium-sized manufacturers are asking, how do I start this journey? So Greta, what advice do you have for small manufacturers that they know they've got to modernize, but they just don't know where to start?
Yeah, well, the important part is to start. But I'd say a lot of the times nowadays what we're seeing is internal usage of the tools for a variety of reasons, even within our own company, right? There's a lot of different processes that we do that are not even, necessarily, the actual manufacturing process, but everything internally, from document management, from, accelerating how quickly we're creating certain pieces of information, processing that information, integrating that into the day-to-day work. So whether it's a maintenance manual, whether it's certain manuals about the products. So finding ways to integrate that quickly could be a very efficient way, especially these days, given the technology. But outside of that, I'd say within the production environment, and especially as it comes to process or quality, really it's about looking at those key areas of data and starting to improve kind of the data quality and availability. Excuse me, across the production floor. A lot of the times people really don't realize even the pockets that already exist, and there's this perception that really you need to do a lot to start to gain some value, but really these days the tools have come to a point where you can really start gathering value and seeing benefit of the data and AI very quickly. So a lot of what we're seeing is just start by gathering that data, making it accessible, and starting to use it in some of the day-to-day operations to see that quick win.
I think that's helpful. Thank you. We're sitting here in Waterloo Region where manufacturing, technology, research are all sort of our lifeblood, and entrepreneurship is what drives our community. There's a growing expectation that other regions need to provide not just industrial space, but an innovation ecosystem that supports growth. So from a talent and workforce perspective, Chris, what does a region need to have in place to attract and retain those manufacturing investments?
Yeah, well, from a workforce perspective, talent kind of for sure is probably one of the most important things that manufacturers put into investment decisions. I mean, you can have the land and building and energy, but if you don't have the talent to support your operations, success is going to be extremely difficult. But I think that's why one of the reasons that Waterloo Region does have such a strong manufacturing presence and base here, is we're fortunate enough to have exceptional post-secondary institutions, and I include Laurier in that as well. But one of the great things about all those institutions is their willingness to kind of adjust and adapt their programming to the needs of businesses within the region, which is great, and it makes them that much more relevant and important to our success. skilled trades, which we've talked about a little bit already. Skilled trades and the interest in skilled trades is critical, and we're seeing really positive momentum with getting skilled trades promoted to younger and younger people through the education system. So even at the elementary and high school level, you know, there's more focus on getting them interested in skilled trades as a career choice. STEM, of course, you know, also critical. That's certainly the types of jobs that we're hiring for, and the types of skills that people need, that analytical thinking and the technical problem solving. And with that, the other thing that's important is just that people get that experiential learning as they're going through, right? So through things like the co-op program, we have, you know, about 150 co-op students a year that we bring in, and that kind of helps, you know, with their education and getting them some experience where they are. Similar, as I already mentioned, apprentices and internships as well, that connect the classroom to the real world or industry. But anyways, at the same time as attracting talent is important, retaining talent is just as critical. And I think that's where, you know, you need to have an environment that people want to stay in, right? So it means you need to have the infrastructure, you need to have affordability, you need to have access to hospitals, you need all those types of things that make, you know, they give people the quality of life that want them to stay and build a career in this region. So anyways, ultimately the strongest regions are those where you've got, you know, government, the education system, industry, other community partners all working together to towards that workforce of the future.
And I think the final piece, thank you, I think the final piece to that too is companies like Toyota who take full advantage of that ecosystem as well, because, you know, we talk to a lot of companies who have been here for years and they want to know how to better integrate with the community. I think Toyota's been a really great example of a company that works well with the community. I'm not sure if there was a shot fired at Laurier there. I'm just going to let that go.
No,
got
I just
Broadway,
wanted to
we're
make
good.
her feel included.
Okay.
That I didn't just mean Waterloo and Conestoga.
As we look ahead, there's a lot of uncertainty, but also huge amounts of opportunity for Canadian manufacturing. We're just about out of time, so I just want to ask you each one more question as we wrap up. So what gives you the most optimism about manufacturing in Canada today as we look at, you know, all of these challenges people are facing?
I get to go first. Okay. Well, we've already talked about, you know, the fact that we have world-class universities, education centers, and some of the most technically adept skills and people in the country here. So, and then concentrated in this area, and that's a huge advantage that we can translate into the defense world, you know, moving into dual technologies, moving from industrial spec to technical spec to mil spec. I think that's your advantage, and that's available to you, and we just need you guys to make that pivot. I think Canadians are resilient. You know, during COVID, right, we used to watch these like horrible statistics of things that were happening, but I got really excited when I heard about like, hey, this country or this company has just, you know, started creating PPE, and, you know, they've just switched their production line to do this. You know, there were things going on with respirators that is like, again, it's kind of like all part of that whole nightmare, but, you know, amazing things were happening. And when our manufacturers were forced, you know, into those conditions, they were very resilient, and I think that's pretty exciting. So I think we've got that kind of resiliency to be successful. You know, I think there's a lot of resources available. I followed our chief economist at an event this week, and as an investment place, you know, Canada, we actually rank higher in terms of our credit rating than our neighbors to the south. So I think that shows that we're a country worth investing in. And, you know, sovereignty is everybody's business. And when I'm meeting with entrepreneurs, I'm reminding us of all that. As consumers, that's important. important, and as businesses, that's important. And increasingly, I'm meeting, customers when we're talking about technology, and they're asking, well, who in the tech space, who in the Canadian tech space has a solution here? And some of them are really proud to tell us that they've chosen, Canadian tech companies, and I know KW is a hub for that. And the BDC is getting really behind that in our most recent program to continue to support sovereignty in lots of different ways to get us to that next level.
Amazing, and I think that'll serve us well over the next couple of years. Hopefully more stable times will come after that. So Greta, what's one thing that manufacturers should prioritize over the next 12 to 24 months to stay competitive?
I think there's feels sometimes like too many, but I think with some of the key areas right now is really one is capital dedicated towards some of this adoption of new technologies. I think that's very critical. Sometimes it's especially given in automotive, obviously there's been a lot of turbulence in the market, and so there's a tendency and desire to preserve capital to maybe wait and see what happens. But I feel like there's a lot of movement in the industry right now, and I was just at even Michigan earlier this week, and one of the stark messages from OEMs to the supply base was that unless you figure out how to innovate and compete with some of the Asian manufacturers, it's likely we're not going to stay in business. So there's a huge push that capital does need to be invested to make sure we're staying competitive and are able to implement some of these new and advanced technologies to not fall behind some of the products and capabilities that are starting to emerge globally. So I think that's one of the things that I would recommend, especially since I often see within Canadian manufacturing bases, we like to play it a little bit safe and kind of see what happens first in other regions before implementing some of this at home. But I think it's really critical these days to start to innovate and aim to compete, especially given so much key capability in manufacturing across Ontario and across Canada. So that would be one key, I think, area where I think I would recommend investing. But outside of that, I think also from a government perspective, there's lots of different capabilities like NGen and other investment in BDC does a lot on that front too. So leveraging that to drive innovation and partnering with the universities to do that, I think will be critical.
Thanks, Greta. So last question for you then. When you think about the future of manufacturing in Ontario, what gives you confidence about the next generation of talent entering the industry today?
I think what gives me the most confidence is just, at Toyota anyways, is at least our own history and our own experience that we've seen over the past 40 years. We had our first car roll off the line in 1988. Our production capacity at the time was about 55,000 vehicles. And I'm sure that at that time there was a lot of doubt of whether or not this venture of a Japan company into Ontario was going to be a success. And, nearly 40 years later, where our production capacity is over 500,000, 10 times what it was when we started, we're now we're extremely proud of the fact that we're the most awarded Toyota plant in the world now. And that success doesn't come from technology alone. It comes from people that are willing to continually adapt and to learn and grow. And that's what gives me kind of confidence in our next generation. Like, our youth are being raised on, in a digital world, they're bringing strong, technical awareness, curiosity, and adaptability. And that's where manufacturing is heading. It also gives me, confidence that the perception of manufacturing is changing as well. I think people are starting to recognize manufacturing, is highly advanced, is innovative, and it's a place that people can grow a long-term career. And I think Ontario as a whole is really well positioned, because of things like the strength of our colleges and our universities, our skilled trades programs, things like co-ops and apprenticeships and internships are all helping young people develop the relevant workplace skills that are going to help drive industry forward. And organizations like the Business and Education Partnership of Waterloo Region is helping to get young people interested in pursuing those careers when when they get to the point if they're having to make decisions on what to do with their future. So ultimately, I'm confident, Ontario has proven it can evolve. Manufacturing looks very different than it did back in 1988 when we started, and I think the next generation is coming with the right mindset and right skill set to help us through the next few decades.
Excellent. That's a really encouraging note to end on. I appreciate that. Thank you all for your expertise this morning. I think it's clear manufacturers are facing a lot of challenges right now, but I think in this region, I'm confident that we'll do what we've always done and innovate our way to a better place. So with that, I'd like to invite Aaron Toplisian from the manufacturing, EMC Canada, to come up to the stage and
Appreciate it. Thank you, panelists. That was a great discussion on innovation, and a lot of good points were said there that kind of tie into what we do at EMC as well. So as Gavin mentioned, my name is Aaron Toplisian. I am the consortium manager for EMC for the Waterloo region. I also am the consortium manager for Guelph, down to Hamilton, Niagara, Brantford. I've got a pretty big territory, which is great. My colleague Shireen Mitchell is joining me here as well from EMC, and she's one of our program managers. And my colleague is Jason. He is actually my leader, but also a consortium manager for Windsor all the way up to Woodstock. So I know there's a few folks in here from these regions. So though this is, a KW Chamber and Waterloo Region event, it's really a partnership with all the surrounding regions. So I just wanted to call that. And of course, Kelly, who you might have met at the desk, she is our health and safety experts program manager. And Matt Weller, man, we have a few of us here. So for the folks who don't know what EMC is and what we do, I actually got to give a shout out to Minister Mulrooney. She had her numbers ready. We're Canada's largest manufacturing consortium. So we're a national consortium, as she mentioned, of over 18,000 businesses we connect with and we support. Our mission has been the same for the last 30 years. It's to provide support and help Canadian manufacturers be globally competitive. And how we do that really comes down to, a few different things. One being events like today and bringing manufacturers into a room together to talk shop, to connect, to understand what challenges or capacity needs you have, and to really bring that home. The other way we support our manufacturing community is training and support. I believe it was the first one of the questions that was asked to Minister Mulrooney about AI adoption. We at EMC, we recognize that this was going to be a trend, but we also work with primarily small and medium manufacturers. And so we partnered, and their booth is up here as well beside ours, with the company called Evermore. So for our training, we always look at community partners and subject matter experts to lead. And that training, the boot camp that we do there, is fantastic. It really helps businesses make it a cost-effective way to bring AI adoption into your operations. It starts with trimming the fat, but I'll leave that to the experts there. We also help with students and getting students into co-op placements. Since 2020, our SWPP, or Skilled Workers Program for Cooperatives, we've invested over $38 million with, in Ontario alone, 3,500 students have been placed with over 500 companies, which in 5 years is pretty impressive. So we recognize, and again, we're a grassroots organization, so we learn this from the manufacturers at the manufacturers, what they need and what's important. And we try our damn best to bring that to the light and to get them the services and support needed. We're going to be doing a panel here after the break, but before we do that, I just want to make a shout out, and we're going to break here for about 20 minutes. Go meet everybody in this room, especially our exhibitors. Without the exhibitors today, this event would not be the same. We've got folks in automation, in solar and renewable energy, in AI, as I mentioned before, in stamping, in metal fabrication, and also look around you and meet the folks at the table here. we have the services, the government partners that are here to make today really a special day. But I want to also give a shout out. We have students here. We're talking about talent, right? And to our educational partners, I know there's a lot of Laurier, and I'm a Waterloo grad, and there's Conestoga folks here. We really need to bring more students to events like this, because as we talk about the future of manufacturing and the talent, they need to be here and hear this. They need to meet you face to face. And we're fortunate. There's a few students that have joined us today from Wilfrid Laurier. And to cap it on the Waterloo beef and the Laurier beef, let's just all say, go Rangers, go. I mean, really, at the end of the day, that's what matters. So let's take a break now. Go meet your expo exhibitors, and we'll be back here for a panel discussion. Thank you.
continue on with the program now. But before we do, great to have Minister Mulrooney here, but also that first panel. Let's give another round of applause to our panelists and minister. So welcome back from the refreshment and networking break. We hope you're able to take a few minutes to connect with fellow attendees, visit the exhibitors, and recharge for the remainder of the program. As we move into the next part of the agenda, we're pleased to continue building on the conversations from this morning with our final panel discussion. To help set the stage, it's my pleasure to welcome one of our gold sponsors to introduce the session. Please join me in welcoming Jim Edwards. He's the Dean, School of Trades and Apprenticeship and Creative Industries with the Conestoga, that's a mouthful, Jim, with the Conestoga College of Technology. Welcome to the stage, Jim.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Sorry for that.
That's a lot of
Hello, everybody, and I just want to say, first and foremost, I'm in awe. I'm amazed. We have fabulous leaders from government, we have fabulous leaders from industry and higher education all joined together to talk about manufacturing in the region. So that's fabulous that we all come together because we're all here about enabling the future of the region. At Conestoga College, we're incredibly proud to be educators, educating learners of tomorrow to enable that workforce and to partner with government and with you as industry leaders in that task ahead. So thank you for the opportunity to partner with you, and of course, thank you for the opportunity to present the panelists today. So let's get on with the show here. All right, I'm pleased to present these speakers for the panel called Made Here, Building a Resilient Manufacturing Ecosystem in Canada. Through collaboration, innovation, and a shared commitment to the regional economic growth, this panel will discuss how Ontario manufacturers can build more resilient supply chains, support local producers, and create a stronger, more self-sustaining economy. Our first panelist is known well to everybody. It's Jim Estill, owner of Danby Appliances, Arctic Snowplow, Dominion Crossworks, and Dominion Crateworks. Apologies, Jim. And Valcom. He started his career as an engineer, but quickly became an investor and mentor of over 150 tech companies. That's quite impressive. The most famous one was, well, it's my former alma mater, BlackBerry there, where he was a founding board member he joined them before they went public. He's currently looking to buy more Ontario-based metal fabricators. Is that right, Jim? You're looking to buy a few more? And he's looking to subcontract metal cutting, bending, welding, and fabrication for other companies. So please welcome Jim. Our second panelist is Sabrina Fiorellino, serial entrepreneur. Sabrina launched Faro International in 2020 after completing the sale of a large private road building company she founded in 2017. In her current business, Sabrina has directed her attention to finding groundbreaking building solutions for healthcare, housing, and other markets through industrialized construction to address today's critical space shortages by building faster, smarter, and greener. Sabrina has been recognized as one of the construction's most influential people in 2025 by Site News and is the recipient of the King Charles III Coronation Medal. Please welcome Sabrina. And as Sabrina joins us on stage, let's welcome our third final panelist here. It's Matt Weller. Matt is a supply chain strategist with over 26 years of experience in manufacturing environments, ranging from industrial to aerospace to tech, both in large multinational and small startup environments. He has spent time working directly with every major component of the supply chain, and as a senior advisor for supply chain and productivity at EMC Canada, his work is focused on helping Canadians, small and medium manufacturers, navigate the current business environment. System thinkings and concern for productivity underpin everything Matt does. Please welcome Matt. And we're going to welcome back to the stage, some of you just met a couple of minutes ago, Aaron Toplushin. Welcome back to the stage to moderate the conversations. As the Manufacturing Consortium Manager for Southern Ontario at EMC Canada, Aaron leverages over a decade of experience in advanced robotics, software, AI, and cybersecurity, all the hot spots there for sure, to support manufacturers within the region and help drive competitiveness of Canada's manufacturing sector. He is deeply committed to EMC's mission to help manufacturers grow through collaborative networks and best practice sharing. So please welcome Aaron, Matt, Sabrina, and Jim. Thank you very much, folks. Over to you, Aaron.
Thank you, Jim. I think it's on. Yep. Okay. Hello, panelists. Thank you for joining. What other Jim was just mentioning in terms of the theme of today's discussion, and I want to have a discussion. I want to make sure that everybody gets perspective and thoughts on some of these questions, and we'll kind of go from there. So, building resilient supply chains really hasn't, well, shouldn't say has never, but it's extremely important today. Specifically, a lot of manufacturers like yourselves are dealing with rising input costs from their global supply chains due to tariffs, due to rising energy and fuel costs, long lead times, and the list goes on, right? So I think today's topic of how we can frame around building at a local capacity and building resiliency through this measure really can hopefully hit home. Now, I'd like to ask the first question to help frame that to each one of you. And we'll go in order. We'll start with Jim, Sabrina, and then Matt. Could each of you share a moment or experience that shaped your perspective on resilience in manufacturing?
So the most recent one is the U.S. brought tariffs in and reduced sales in one of my companies, Arctic Snowplow, by 90% in the United States, because the tariff on a snowplow went from $400 to $2,500. So what we had is a factory with laser cutters and welding and bends and brakes and all that kind of stuff, and we were able to go out and a friend of mine, Bredner Trailer, leases a bunch of trailers. Go in and say, what parts are you buying that are made in USA? We were able to pivot, and now we're making truck trailer parts in a snowplow factory. So you're surviving despite what's going on. So I say these tariffs are a business person's nightmare, but an entrepreneur's dream. And the sky is not falling, it's just raining a bit.
It's just raining. Thank you. Sabrina?
So a very similar experience. Tariffs came in, and our business was actually not impacted as much as I thought it was going to be, given how much steel, aluminum, copper, these things we use, HVAC. And so we sort of reflected, why is this happening? 80% of our supply chain or more is actually within 100 kilometers of our plant. And so I started thinking about, as we expand globally, consolidation of supply chain, but does it really make sense? Does it make sense, or do we use that same model at every plant that we expand to across Canada, US, Europe, where we localize the supply chain? Like, what's actually more expensive or not, especially in this uncertain environment? So that's something we're starting to analyze now.
Excellent. I love that. Matt?
Yeah, so it's hard to come up with an exact. I'm going to say pretty much for my whole career as a supply chain guy specifically, anyone who's in supply chain knows that if that's your profession, then you live your life dodging bullets, basically. Like, this is, and it's not going to get any less so in the years to come. But I think having gone through financial crises, other trade issues, for a while when the Canadian dollar was at par with the US, that was a rough time. I think the one thing that I learned specifically about resilience is that when we think about resilience, we tend to think about, if I'm resilient, then I'm immune to anything bad happening. I take a slightly different approach and say resilience is how fast you can recover, because stuff's going to happen no matter what, but who can recover the fastest that matters. And I can think of COVID, actually, when we couldn't have face masks, right? Like, there was a shortage, among other things, right? And here in the region, right, there was a 3D printing company that I think they were educational in nature, right, to teach people about 3D printing, and they pivoted very quickly And within a matter of just a few weeks, they were mass producing face masks, right? So that's an example of resilience and being able to quickly ascertain your supply chains, your supply base, your resources, and pivot them quickly when an adverse event hits.
Right. And that story, especially the story just now that you shared on, manufacturers pivoting for a universal crisis, we'll call it. It's a wake-up call that us as manufacturers, or I should say the manufacturing community, has always been adaptable, has always been resilient, and whether it's the advent of a new technology and being the first to adopt typically. And Sabrina and Jim, similarly, Sabrina, I'm going to start with you with kind of my follow-up question. And, as you said, you're doing an analysis now, and I think you just said 80% of your supply chain, was it, that is coming in from just 100 kilometers away. Just out of curiosity, what are those products and inputs that maybe you source locally, but what are some that you're still relying on importing, and could those realistically be sourced locally?
Yeah, so a lot of, I'd say, construction sector inputs are still coming from abroad. Electrical panels, some copper, some aluminum, some structural steel. Do I think we can do it? Yes, but I do think that it's going to require government support of the industry. The steel industry is already hurting. We're buying as much local steel as we can, but to start up a new operation from zero and compete with the U.S. or Turkey or anyone offshore would require significant government support to do that.
Okay, and I'll touch on that too, but I'm curious, Jim, for the many companies you have, I know you're passionate about this too, of what could be produced locally, like in just even in your own supply chain. What are some of those that could realistically, and possibly people in this room should hear?
So, the real issue is volume. So if you're making 100,000 of a part, are we going to be competitive making it if we're only using 10,000 in Canada or 5,000 in Canada? We import lights, we import motors, we import pistons, we import, the one that I thought we could do is fasteners, because that's not very high technology, it's highly automated, and that was just one idea that came to mind. You can do fasteners on CNC machines, which we have, but that could be the thing. You do need to make sure we've got the source of the raw material at a reasonable price that we could have competitive advantage. In business, everything's about competitive advantage. And interestingly, the tariffs do give us a slight competitive advantage they have a 50% tariff on steel going into the States. The price of steel in the United States right now is about 10 or 12% higher than it is in Canada. And so we start with a 10% cost advantage, a Canadian dollar cost advantage. And the other thing that's happened is transportation. Every trucking company I deal with wants us to pay some surcharges. I can't understand what the problem is, but the price of oil means more, which means if your supply chain's 80 kilometers, that's cheap. Your supply chain's 800 kilometers or overseas, it's expensive.
Right. And Matt, I'm curious to get your take as well, because in your businesses and over your career, you've worked everywhere from multinational corporations to startups who are scaling from zero. And I know you're passionate about this topic in terms of what's being imported, and let's pick on the U.S. because we know that number is quite high. Like, in your eyes, kind of as a collective, as a sector, and we could even get regional if you like, what do you think we could realistically start importing here?
Yeah, great question. I think in 2025, if I remember correctly, it was $277 billion worth of goods that were imported from the U.S. into Ontario for various reasons. A lot of that stuff, honestly, is related to automotive, but I like to think about it like this. What are we importing that would be considered a low volume, high value good? So to Jim's point, like, volume is absolutely an issue, right? And Canada has, compared to the US, we have a tiny population that's all huddled very tightly along the border. That's basically us, right? So there's an addressable market issue if you want to talk about strictly for Canada. But what are products that we are importing I'm going to say like MRI machines as an example that are low volume. You're not going to be making millions of these things, but high value. They have to work. The quality has to be there. They have to be reliable. They have to be durable, right? What are those products that we're getting elsewhere that we could be making here? That's of keen interest to me.
Right. So focusing on, I'll just say kind of more of those complicated, but really high skilled, high value, which require the talent and the skill sets that the Canadian manufacturing, let's call it sector, potentially possesses, depending on product, of course, is kind of where you would put your 2 cents in?
Yeah, and I mean, I think I'll add to that as well. I think that's a natural fit for Canada. Like a lot of our manufacturing is in that category, is the low volume, higher value, or customization or mixed manufacturing. And believe it or not, that is something that's actually really difficult to do well. Other nations struggle with it, right? We talk about China all the time. Well, China is really about high volume, ultimately, right? And they're good at it, right? Let's be honest. But I think we have a niche that we could really carve out for ourselves if we wanted to kind of leverage what we're already doing and just, rather than look at it as a weakness, call it a strength, because I think there's need for it, both domestically and then beyond. I really do.
Right. And those types of systems, those MRI machines, it's not one company that's going to make every component. That's really a collaborative approach where, a group or a sector of manufacturers across the nation, but regionally speaking, have that opportunity to collaborate, right? And, we hear collaborate often, and we're here to collaborate. And one of the things I've learned on my journey as well is, when we talk about sharing these interests and sharing best practices, a lot of folks say, well, we're manufacturers. We don't share nothing. We hold this close to chest, at least the perception that a lot of people have. But I'd like to ask all three of you the same question. And Sabrina, if you don't mind, I'll start with you. What, in your eyes, does meaningful collaboration between, say, competitors or other, manufacturers look like in practice?
Yeah, so I think I don't see our industry competitors as competitors. If my competitors don't exist, my industry doesn't exist, so I need them to grow with me. Otherwise, no one's building modular. So it's really important. Collaboration is really important, but specifically on supply chain, we use a lot of wood and a lot of steel, but there are some modular manufacturers who use all wood or all steel. And what I've found is that the wood lobby is very strong right now. So there's 2 provinces, BC and Nova Scotia, that have a wood first procurement policy because of the wood lobby. And for me, that's problematic when you're building things like healthcare that should be really non-combustible. Now, the province or the procurement teams are allowed to say, no, it should be non-combustible by code, et cetera, but we actually saw a project come out in Nova Scotia that was supposed to be a renal dialysis unit, and they procured it as an office building so they could build it in wood, which in my opinion is wrong. And so I think the steel lobby really needs to get more collaborative, especially because auto's hurting right now, but our sector's growing significantly and we're using a lot of steel. And so we need to start lobbying government, I think, as a whole, including with the manufacturers, to say we need to use steel in buildings, especially multi-story buildings, healthcare buildings.
Right. That's a really good opportunity there. So any steel lobby folks here, it's a message to be received. And I love that approach as well, where now that we're seeing the rise of modular manufacturing, we're literally seeing homes built like at your facility, within a facility, which is fantastic. I think construction and manufacturing, yes, both are always producing things, but now are really merging. And so those associations and organizations and groups really need to be on the same page. That's fantastic. Jim, I'll ask the same question in terms of, yeah.
So I agree with Sabrina. Most manufacturers are not competing with each other. I mean, I'm competing with you if you're making fridges, but if you're making anything else, then we're friends because you're not taking my business. And if we can get our steel at a lower price or get our hinges cheaper or anything like that, it helps. So organizations like yours, Aaron, really help. I wanted to go back to your previous question on what other products we can make. And I sent Aaron, I delegate the work to him, a list of every product that is made in the USA that is imported to Canada. And anyone in the audience who makes anything that wants more business can take that list and see, oh, we brought in $100 million worth of XYZ. It's done by HS Code, the import. And the reason I love that list is if a product is made in the USA, I can probably have a shot of doing it in Canada. I hate to say it, if it's made in China, I probably don't have a chance of doing it in Canada competitively. So anyway, put the plug in for that.
Yeah, well, I'll be probably receiving a lot of emails after that, but no, and that's a really good point, and that actually leads kind of back to an earlier point you made, and a question that I think let's jump on is, when we're thinking of competing with the U.S., right? What are ways that our governments that are potentially in the room today, associations, possibly like EMC or an industry, like what are ways that we can strip down those barriers so that, and I've heard you mention before, Jim, if it's less than 3%, we have a shot at something when we're competing apples to apples, right? So what in your eyes, and Matt, I'll start with you on this one, that those bodies, government associations, could make an impact immediately so that we do become more competitive and we build a larger manufacturing ecosystem here regionally in the next 3 to 5 years, let's say?
I think one of the things in this, it's not purely on government, but just bodies in general, we do suffer, particularly in Canada, from a lot of really bad narratives about manufacturing. And I still hear it in 2026, right? Well, it's dirty, right? Or it's this, or it's that, or it's not very exciting. Or when my daughter was in school, I actually had the unfortunate hearing a parent behind me at a future careers fair when someone had a little booth about manufacturing, and the parent behind me said to her son, well, that's where you go if you don't finish school, right? And we know this is simply not true. Right? This is a tech community, right? And we like to talk about tech a lot. I like to say that manufacturing is tech in motion, right? It's where all the theory gets applied and stuff gets done. So I think we have work to do to change narratives. Other narratives that I hear is that, well, we don't produce anything in Canada, or we can't produce anything in Canada. These are both patently false. One of the things that we are working on is trying to build a network of process capabilities to map out Canada's manufacturing capabilities specifically. So not necessarily by products, but actual capabilities. Because, as governments are trying to build to the future, we've talked about defense, there's other initiatives as well, trying to re-industrialize the country. It's great to have all those ideas, but somewhere you have to say, well, where are we starting from? What's the gap? What do we need to build in the future in order to make this happen? What can we produce today? What are we able to produce in the future? And the only way you're going to do that is to map out what capabilities already exist. And this also goes for manufacturers who are maybe seeing shifts and wondering what their future is. If they're tied to automotive and they're seeing volumes go down and they're looking for something to pivot to, right? We don't want to see those go away. We want to retain the manufacturing capabilities we have. We want to grow it. So we should be helping manufacturers to find opportunities to pivot. And part of the way to do that is find out what they're capable of producing, not necessarily what they are producing today, but what they are capable of producing, and map that out.
And I know EMC has taken a lead on that initiative. It's our industry connector program that Matt, you've spun up and worked with many partners, both on the provincial economic development front as well as some other stakeholders. So there is more information up at the front too. Sorry, that's my plug. But I want to ask that same question because it comes back to your earlier response and what can, again, the government, especially for your business and your world.
Yeah, so Minister Mulroney talked about it, the Buy Ontario, Buy Canada programs, and I spoke about it at the roundtable. 90% of our business is really to government. We build hospitals, schools, jails, military facilities, and there's still a way to circumvent that Buy Ontario or Buy Canada. So as a modular builder, we're often 60% or more of the project scope, but there's a general contractor who's bidding to government. And so they can now source a manufacturer, modular manufacturer, for example, let's say an MR or CT from the US rather than from us. And so I think government needs to work on the whole supply chain and Buy Ontario and Buy Canada in order to ensure that the manufacturing is actually happening here, and it's not just the person who's winning the contract, especially big military contracts. Your big GC is literally downstreaming all of that work. They're not doing anything but managing the project. So I think that's very important.
Right. So every component of call it the supply of the labor and the resources and the services for those contract needs to be actually built in Ontario, made in Ontario, made in Canada. I didn't know that. That's actually, I didn't realize that they can circumvent that easily. Jim, similar question.
Well, I agree with what Sabrina's saying, and what I advocate for would be percentage Canadian, because that sort of solves the problem, right? And I have a little defense business, and in defense business, there's this thing called offsets that when Canada gives a big contract, they say you have to do $100 million in Canada, and then companies are able to give those credits. So I like the offset credits. I don't like government supports. The problem is we ask government to spend money, their only source of money is to tax us, and I don't like taxes, so I tend to not love government money. Governments like to put their money into big announcements. Opening a plant, 1,000 jobs. Here, have $100 million. But where the growth will be, I think, we don't want to have more dependency on auto. We want to have little dependency on 1,000 little guys, so supporting the little guys. Another thing the government could do to even make things a little better, the list of imports made in USA, I think they should go one step further and say exactly what it is, and even exactly the cost. Because imagine if you could tell me that they're buying 100 trailer hitches or 100,000 trailer hitches and they're paying $42, then we can make a decision, is that a business we want to be in or not? Because right now all it comes in under as trailer parts. Well, what does that mean? Like you talking truck trailers or car trailers or what?
No, well, maybe we should partner with them on the list that you've got going already and just say, hey, tell us how much this is and get more granular on it, because that's a really good point. I want to kind of switch gears a little bit here and ask this question for the fellow manufacturers that are in the room today. And there's a variety of businesses that have been around for decades, and a few that are just starting. I actually had a conversation with a very nice woman who is looking for a manufacturer to build their product right now. They've innovated a technology. So what advice, and Jim will kind of come back this way, what advice would you give someone who is stepping into the sector that's maybe been around for 5 years that you wish you had when you were starting your businesses?
More entrepreneurs fail from perfection than fail from speed. So what we need speed, and it's sort of a just do it and don't be shy. As far as Canadian and Ontario manufacturing goes, I actually believe there's a competitive advantage. I think our SHRED program is good here, and I think if you're starting in small, that's the type of work that all Ontario manufacturers can do. I'm global and make 2 million appliances, but in Ontario, if you come and say, I want to buy 150 pieces, 500 pieces, that's what I'll do here. If you're doing 100,000 pieces, it probably gets done offshore.
Sabrina?
I would say we have a really strong manufacturing ecosystem, and we should tap into that. I think we don't do enough of that. Collaborate together, share stories, share voices, share the struggles that we have, and then lobby to overcome them together. I think that's a really important piece that I probably didn't do enough of earlier in my career that I'm doing way more of today.
Like that. So collaborating more and lobbying together and meeting the other people who are here in the region. I mean, that's why we're here today, and you know, it's something I know EMC has always been passionate about as well, is connecting everyone. We want to facilitate these types of interactions. So, Matt, similar question, but you know, you get a different perspective because you've worked with many different manufacturers in your career. You know, what advice would you have for them?
Network, right? You need a collaborative ecosystem. So time I've spent in tech, I will point out, because we are in a tech community, right? The tech ecosystem has done really well, I think, at networking and collaborating. Most tech companies that I've seen or met or worked with are usually aware of everyone else to some degree. They have that level of visibility. But thinking back to early stages, you know, in terms of things I wish I knew when I was younger that other companies do. Every young startup, whether they're tech or traditional manufacturing, whatever, they always tend to think that whatever they're doing, that it's unique and nobody else has ever tried to do it before. And they struggle and they struggle and they struggle and they struggle to solve it independently. And it's not necessary. Whatever it is, somebody else has either done it or done something similar and can help to give you the information you need to get to that next level quickly, as Jim said. So build those networks and collaborate. It can't be understated how important that is.
Appreciate that. Yeah. We're pretty much at the end of the questions on my end. I guess one last question, and thank you all for this dialogue and this discussion. I really appreciate everyone chipping in at each one of these. I like to put the positive spin on everything. So I'm going to ask, what is giving you optimism about the future of manufacturing right now? And we'll go this way for once.
Well, we're in a very interesting time right now. And I think what gives me more enthusiasm than perhaps I've had in years past is that I think we are starting to collectively wake up and look at our manufacturing in a different way. We're starting to look as a country at our manufacturing as a strategic asset, one that needs to be protected, one that needs to be nurtured, one that our sovereignty depends on, and we need to start treating it that way, right? I think I'm going to argue that for many years at a national level, we haven't treated it that way. That elevation, that shift, I think is powerful. I think we need to leverage that shift and see where we can take it, but that gives me a lot of hope for the future.
Yeah, I think very similar. Prem Watts, I spoke at the Empire Club. For those who don't know who he is, CEO or owner of Fairfax. He said that as long as the economic conditions for entrepreneurs to succeed exist, the sky's the limit. So he built Fairfax, $40 billion. I think the tariff situation with the U.S. in some ways woke up the country. And like you said, our sovereignty depends on things changing and for us being able to grow manufacturing. So I think if we can do that, the sky's the limit for the manufacturing sector here. It's very special, and I think we can do something very special.
Thank you.
So the analogy I use is I was one of the founding directors of BlackBerry, and BlackBerry grew massively. And when it blew up, which it didn't blow up completely, but when it blew up, how many businesses did that create in Waterloo? For a year, real estate, everyone thought, no one's going to vacate, and then 2 years later, you couldn't rent anything, and they were still building. So what's happening now is a little bit of that. We're just going to have this little explosion, but there's going to be tons and tons of little things. And I think now it's cooler to be a manufacturer than it ever has been. So everyone, you're getting support from everywhere, is my view.
Thank you. And yeah, that high mindset of what can happen when you have an explosion in investment. And I know there's a lot of different subjects there. I think we still have a bit of time, so I did want to do it a bit different and open up to maybe a couple questions if you three are okay with that from the audience. We're probably looking at about 10 minutes or so here. Yeah, so I wanted to leave time to give the audience an opportunity to ask Jim or Sabrina or Matt any questions. So anyone have any questions for the group? Okay, come on, don't be shy. Wow, you guys did a great job. You answered every problem, challenge. Oh, we got one. I can't see because the light's blinding. Do you mind standing up? Yeah, on Industry Connect, I think.
Yeah, sure. So I want to try and make sure I answer the question. So if I go on a wrong path, raise your hand and redirect me. But essentially, we don't have information out there in terms of what process capabilities exist in this country, right? We have very high-level aggregate data based on financial reporting that says we'll produce X, Y, Z, and whatever else. But how many CNC lathes do we have, let's say, in Waterloo region, right? And what are they capable of producing? And in CNC, mills of that nature, welding shops, machine shops, right? Where are they? Where do they exist? What communities are they in? What communities are they in? They serving? What communities don't have those resources where that could be an entrepreneurial opportunity for somebody to set something up? We really have no idea because we have no way to map that out and see where the gaps are and where the redundancies are and everything else, right? And we certainly have no way to pair that up to any kind of a product or any kind of an initiative like the defense initiative that we have right now to say, here's the stuff we're gonna need in the next 20, 30 years. How do we make it, right? You have to map it. So what this is an effort to get that information from manufacturers. And it sounds so simple. And the obvious question is, so why doesn't it already exist? Because it turns out that it's extremely complicated to build. There is no government list of capabilities that we can download and say, there you go. It actually depends on every single manufacturer independently reporting, this is what we have, this is what we're capable of producing. Not necessarily what we are producing, but we have welding capabilities, we have machining capabilities, we have food processing capabilities, right? And so what we are trying to do now is to gather that information literally one by one by manufacturers, create an online network where they can have a license plate, let's say, that lists these attributes about their companies, but they manage it. Because the other thing we know is that directories are stale dated by day 2. Because somebody changes, there's an M&A event, they have a whole different set of things that they're capable of. These things change all the time. So we need manufacturers to update that information as well. And so this is what we're trying to build, right? And so it's a process, right? So we are working, literally reaching out to companies, inviting them to join, but also reaching out one by one. We are not keeping it within the EMC network. We don't care if you're an EMC member or not. That's irrelevant. We're trying to map the supply chain regardless of what group you may belong to. And we want that data to be freely accessible to anybody. We're not trying to charge to just simply see that you exist out there. Okay. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but okay.
Great question. Up front, this gentleman. Thank you, Jason. Any other questions for the panelists? Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, I'm pretty loud anyway, but yeah, so Jim, every time I see you, I always say, which business are you representing today, right? And so as a serial entrepreneur myself, the first couple of mergers and acquisition type things that I did, I ended up just folding them into my original company because it's easier for people to understand. I'm currently opening another company right now. It's blowing people's minds a little bit, and I don't understand why, because it's just another company. It's a separate company. It's a separate entity. It's a separate thing. But how do you reconcile that? How do you explain when you're working on different projects and have different companies? And I've got fantastic staff who run everything, so I'm not even there, but I'm still the face. How do you reconcile that?
Well, I'm lucky partly because I'm old. So all my businesses have presidents. I sit in the owner seat, and that is a different seat in my opinion. I don't do any work. Everyone else does all the work, and I am. If you do the EOS or traction thing, which all my companies run on, I'm the visionary. I'm not the operator, and it's tough to move from operator to visionary because you like operating, which I did. The other thing that happens when we incubate something and eventually spin it out, for quite a while there's overlap, and there is a little bit of weirdness as to which company is which, but eventually what becomes larger becomes big enough to spin out and make its own way. But I like incubating within the companies that I have too, because that's a good way to get your utilization up without, I own a company that makes air conditioners, and what's that? It's a summer business. So why did I buy a snowplow business? Winter business, right? Flow resources between the two of them. Logical.
Sabrina?
Yeah, I did the same thing, paving and snowplow. So paving in the summer, snowplow in the winter. I would say a lot of that's noise. Someone who doesn't run multiple businesses at the same time often can't wrap their head around being able to do it, because there are resources in place, to your point, Jim. There's resources in place to operate them. And I would say, just put your head down and keep growing. The business, it will stand on its own. It will speak for itself when it's big enough, and listen less to the noise.
I like that. I think that puts us at time. Yep. Well, thank you again, Matt, Sabrina, Jim. Thank you, everybody. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you.
I was going to say you could stay there, but you can go off stage too. Listen, thank you, Aaron, and to the panel. Fascinating discussion, and thank you to Jason and Aaron and the entire EMC team for co-hosting today's event with the Chamber. I think an amazing day of information about innovation and partnership, and some of the themes that I think are right across, whether it's a Chamber event, an EMC event, that you hear all the time, and they're pretty constant. Networking, speed, innovation, collaboration. I think those are business terms regardless of what sector you're in. So thanks for all of our speakers and to the EMC team for putting this program together today. As we wrap up, I just want to take an opportunity to thank our incredible sponsors and partners once again, our co-host and presenting partner, EMC Canada, our gold sponsors, BDC, Conestoga College Institute of Technology and Advanced Learning, Cowan Insurance Group, Home Hardware Stores Limited, Toyota Motor Manufacturing Canada, and Waterloo Economic Development Corporation. Our bronze sponsors, the City of Kitchener, the City of Waterloo, GHD, the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region, National Bank, and the Region of Waterloo. A special thank you to Bingamans and HF Events, Sherwood, and KW Oktoberfest teams for helping us get the room set up and for hosting today's event. And finally, a thank you to you for participating today, whether you watched online or joined us in person, for your continued support of our programming at the Chamber and EMC. If you're looking for more great events, specifically around innovation, talent, and the movement of goods, we invite you to attend Canada's Innovation Corridor Summit on Tuesday, June the 23rd at the Crown Plaza, KW. This event is one in a series of three, co-hosted by the Toronto Region Board of Trade, the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, and the Greater KW Chamber. So our event on June 23rd, we're excited to welcome the Honourable Vic Fedeli. He's Ontario's Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. And we'll have J.D. Bellawance, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse, to talk about the political picture nationally and internationally and how it impacts business. And we'll have more speakers to be announced in the coming days. For full events Details and registration, please visit greaterkwchamber.com. And just quickly before we wrap up, congratulate Kevin Litwiller, who was the winner at the Sheetal Construction booth. Please visit them on your way by, Kevin, to pick up your prize. Thanks once again for joining us today. We hope you leave with new ideas, valuable connections, and a renewed sense of optimism about the future of manufacturing in our region. Have a wonderful afternoon and safe travels home. Whoop.
I failed up there. For those who are going to be participating in the off-site tours, special thank you first and foremost to Custom Leather Manufacturing, who are across the street from here, and Christie Digital, who are down the road. For those who have registered for the site tours, they'll begin at 12:30, and then the second one will be at 1:30. Please do come at your time because capacity, and make sure you are wearing closed shoes for both those facilities, as that's a requirement. Totally forgot to slip that into my part.